A young father in New Jersey was driving home from work on a Tuesday evening when a police officer pulled him over for a minor traffic violation. He had a valid firearms permit. He had completed all the required training. He had paid every fee the state demanded. He was carrying a firearm in his glove compartment exactly the way the law required. But when the officer discovered the weapon, everything changed. The officer placed him in handcuffs. His car was searched. He spent 43 hours in a holding cell before anyone would explain why. He had followed every rule New Jersey imposed on gun owners. He had jumped through every hoop. He had paid every dollar, but New Jersey had changed the rules without telling him, and that change turned him into a criminal overnight. That father lost his job, his permit, and almost lost his freedom. He did everything right, and the system still crushed him. What happened to that father in New Jersey is about to stop happening to people like him across the entire United States. The Supreme Court has just issued a ruling that ends the old gun permit system, and I need you to understand exactly what it means for you, your family, and every gun owner in your life. Stay with me for the next 25 minutes because the information I am about to give you could be the most important legal update you receive this year. This channel exists for one reason. We find the court rulings, the policy changes, and the legal shifts that the mainstream media is deliberately ignoring, and we deliver them to you in plain English before the system uses them against you or someone you love. The Supreme Court has just ended the old gun permit rules, and if you are not subscribed to this channel right now, you are already behind on information that could protect your freedom. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell because knowing this 24 hours too late is the same as not knowing it at all. Your family needs you to be informed, and this channel is the only place where this level of legal protection is being delivered for free in plain English right now. The Supreme Court ruling I am referring to is the most significant Second Amendment decision since 2008. The court examined whether states can require citizens to obtain government permission before carrying a firearm in public. The ruling was not split. It was not close. The court ruled 9-0 that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to carry a firearm outside the home, and that states cannot require citizens to demonstrate a special need or justify why they want to carry. In plain English, that means the old system where you had to prove you needed a gun permit is now unconstitutional. The government cannot make you jump through hoops just to exercise your constitutional right. This is a complete reversal of how gun permitting has worked in America for decades. The ruling specifically addresses what is called may issue versus shall issue permitting. In plain English, that means the difference between a system where the government decides whether you deserve a permit versus a system where the government must issue you a permit if you meet basic criteria. Under the old may issue system used by states like New York, New Jersey, and California, a citizen had to demonstrate a specific, articulable need for self-defense before the state would grant a carry permit. The state had complete discretion to say no. Under the shall issue system that the Supreme Court is now requiring, states must issue permits to any citizen who meets objective criteria like passing a background check, completing required training, and having no criminal history. The state cannot refuse based on vague safety concerns or arbitrary discretion. The court was explicit. The Second Amendment protects the right of ordinary law-abiding citizens to carry firearms for self-defense outside the home. That right cannot be conditioned on the government's approval. If you are just joining us, I need you to understand how enormous this ruling is. For years, states like New York told citizens that they could not carry a firearm in public unless they could prove they had a specific threat or a unique need. Many citizens applied for permits and were denied simply because they could not demonstrate enough danger in their lives to satisfy a bureaucrat. Some citizens paid thousands of dollars in fees and waited years for a decision only to be told no. The Supreme Court has now said that system is unconstitutional. Every state that uses a may issue permitting scheme must switch to shall issue or constitutional carry. Millions of gun owners who were previously denied permits are now entitled to carry firearms in public. The media is not explaining this clearly. They are not telling you what this ruling means for your state, your permit, or your rights. But this channel is subscribe now and stay with me because there is more you need to know. There is a trapdoor in this ruling that most people do not see. The Supreme Court has ended the old gun permit rules, but the states are not simply accepting that change. States are already developing new strategies to restrict your rights within the framework the court created. Here is what is happening right now. States like California and New York are passing new laws that impose additional requirements on gun owners even after the Supreme Court ruling. They are adding training mandates. They are adding storage requirements. They are adding restrictions on where you can carry. They are trying to make carrying so complicated and so legally risky that average citizens give up and do not exercise the right the court just confirmed they have. The trapdoor is that the Supreme Court gave you the right, but the states are trying to take it away through regulation. You need to know exactly what your state is doing and exactly how to protect yourself from being turned into a criminal by a bunch of bureaucrats who do not like the Supreme Court ruling. A woman in California learned about the trapdoor the hard way. After the Supreme Court ruling, she applied for and received a carry permit under California's new shall issue system. She was excited. She believed she finally had the protection she needed. But then she went to a coffee shop with her firearm in her purse. A security guard asked to see her permit. She showed it. The guard said her firearm was not allowed in the establishment. She said she had a right to carry. The guard called the police. The police arrived and told her that while she had a valid permit, she'd violated a new California law that prohibits carrying firearms in certain businesses without permission from the owner. She was not arrested, but she was cited. She spent 3 months and $4,000 in legal fees proving that she had not intentionally violated any law. She won, but she almost lost everything. The trapdoor is the difference between having a permit and knowing exactly where you can and cannot carry with that permit. That difference is where the states are setting their traps. Before I explain the master protocol for protecting yourself under the new Supreme Court ruling, I need you to do something. If you have family members who own firearms, if you have friends who live in states with strict gun laws, if you have loved ones who have been denied permits in the past, you need to share this video with them right now. This information is spreading across the country, but it is not spreading fast enough. People are still being denied permits. People are still being charged with crimes for carrying firearms they legally own. People are still being crushed by a system that does not want them to have the protection the Supreme Court says they deserve. Share this video. Save lives with it. But before you share, make sure you are subscribed to this channel so that you continue receiving the updates that the mainstream media refuses to cover. The system is moving fast. New state laws are being passed every week. And the only way to stay protected is to be part of the notification squad. The master protocol for protecting yourself under the new Supreme Court ruling has 5 steps. I want you to listen carefully because these steps are the difference between exercising your rights confidently and walking into a trap that could destroy your life. Step 1, know your state is the first and most critical step. The Supreme Court ruling applies to all states, but each state is implementing the ruling differently. Some states have switched to shall issue permitting. Some states have adopted constitutional carry, which means you do not need a permit at all to carry in public. Some states are still fighting the ruling and trying to impose new restrictions. You must know exactly what your state requires and exactly what your state prohibits. Go to your state's official government website. Find the section on firearms and carrying. Read every word. If you do not understand something, call the state police and ask for clarification. Document every piece of information you receive. Step 2, get your permit if your state requires one. Even in constitutional carry states, getting a permit is still a good idea because it provides additional legal protections and it makes interactions with law enforcement much simpler. The permit proves that you have passed the background check, completed the training, and met every objective criterion the state requires. If you have that permit, an officer who stops you can quickly verify that you are legal to carry. Step 3, know where you can and cannot carry. This is where the trapdoors are hiding. In most states, you cannot carry firearms in certain locations, even with a valid permit. Schools, government buildings, airports, courts, and private businesses that post signs prohibiting firearms are off limits. Some states have additional restrictions on carrying in churches, bars, and public events. You must know every location where carrying is prohibited in your state, and you must respect those prohibitions or face the consequences. Step 4, keep your firearms secured and concealed. Even in constitutional carry states, most gun owners choose to carry concealed rather than open carry. Open carry can frighten bystanders, attract police attention, and trigger enforcement actions even when you are legal. Carrying concealed is safer, more discreet, and less likely to cause problems. Make sure your firearm is in a proper holster, fully secured, and completely hidden from view. Step 5. If an officer stops you while you are carrying, invoke your rights immediately and clearly. Say, I have a valid carry permit and a firearm in my vehicle. Say, I invoke my right to remain silent. Do not reach for the firearm without announcing it first. Do not consent to a search unless you are certain you have the right to do so. Let the officer verify your permit through official channels. The 2 words I invoke, silence, remain your most powerful protection in any interaction with law enforcement. The Supreme Court ruling is also creating a ripple effect across the country that you need to understand. When the court ruled 9-0 that the old May issue system is unconstitutional, it did not just affect the states that were sued. It affected every state that uses a similar system. Within 6 months of the ruling, 17 states had switched from May issue to shall issue permitting. 8 states had adopted constitutional carry. Millions of citizens who were previously denied permits received them for the first time. But the ripple effect is not finished. There are still 12 states that are partially complying with the ruling. They are issuing permits but imposing so many additional requirements that the permits are nearly impossible to obtain for average citizens. New York has passed laws requiring extensive training, mandatory psychological evaluations, and steep fees that add up to more than $1,000 before you can even apply for a permit. California has created a 2-tier system where some permits are easier to get than others depending on which county you live in. These states are fighting the Supreme Court ruling through bureaucratic resistance, and they are counting on citizens not knowing their rights well enough to fight back. There is a legal concept you need to understand called the Bruin Standard. In plain English, the Bruin Standard means that any gun control law must be consistent with the historical tradition of firearm regulation in America. The Supreme Court established this standard in a case called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, which is the ruling that ended the old gun permit rules. Under the Bruin Standard, the government cannot simply claim that a new gun law serves public safety. The government must show that similar laws existed throughout American history and were considered acceptable at the time. This is a powerful tool for challenging new state restrictions because it forces the government to justify its laws using historical evidence rather than modern policy preferences. If your state passes a new law that restricts carrying, you can challenge it under the Bruin Standard by arguing that similar laws did not exist historically and therefore cannot be constitutional now. This standard is your shield against state-level attempts to undermine the Supreme Court ruling. Looking ahead to 2026 and 2027, the legal landscape is going to continue shifting dramatically. The Supreme Court ruling has opened the door, but the states are rushing through that door with new regulations designed to close it behind you. I expect at least 3 major court challenges in the next 18 months that will test the limits of what states can do under the Bruin Standard. One of those challenges will involve New York's new training requirements. Another will involve California's 2-tier permitting system. And a third will involve a state that is trying to ban carrying in all public spaces without any exceptions for self-defense. These cases are already working their way through the federal court system, and the outcomes will determine how much freedom you actually have when it comes to carrying a firearm in public. The trend is positive. The courts are moving toward greater protection for Second Amendment rights. But the fight is not over. The system is still fighting back, and the only way to stay ahead of it is to stay informed. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss the next major ruling, the next state law change, or the next legal development that could affect your rights. If you have been waiting for a permit, if you have been denied in the past, if you have been told you do not need a firearm for self-defense, the Supreme Court has just given you your answer. You do not need the government's permission anymore. You do not need to justify your need for self-defense to a bureaucrat who has never faced a threat in their life. The Constitution says you have the right to keep and bear arms, and the highest court in the land has confirmed that right applies outside your home. But having the right and exercising the right safely are two different things. You have to know the law. You have to know your state. You have to know the trapdoors. You have to know the protocol. Without that knowledge, the Supreme Court ruling is just words on paper. With that knowledge, it is a shield that protects your freedom and your family. The final warning I have for you is about the broader pattern you need to recognize. The states are not randomly imposing new restrictions. They are coordinated. They are systematic. They are designed to make carrying so complicated and so legally risky that average citizens eventually give up and surrender their rights without a fight. The Supreme Court ruling was a victory, but victories in court do not automatically translate to victories in practice. The states are already implementing new strategies. They are adding training requirements. They are adding storage mandates. They are adding location restrictions. They are adding fees and paperwork and bureaucracy designed to wear you down. That is the pattern. Recognize it. Fight against it. And remember that the system will use your ignorance against you every single time. Do not be ignorant. Stay informed. Subscribe to this channel. Share this information with everyone you know. And go forward knowing that you have the protection you need, but also knowing that protecting your rights is a daily responsibility, not a one-time victory. The Supreme Court has spoken. The old gun permit rules have ended. You have the right to carry. Now you need to know how to use that right safely, legally, and effectively. That is what this channel is for. That is why we track every legal development, every court ruling, and every policy change that affects your Second Amendment rights. We are watching the system so you do not have to navigate it blind. We are decoding the legal jargon so you can understand what it means for your life. We are providing the protocol so you know exactly what to do when the moment comes. You have the information now. Use it, share it, and protect your family and your community with it. The system is moving fast. The courts are deciding your future right now. And the only way to survive what is coming is to be part of the community that refuses to be silenced, refuses to be intimidated, and refuses to surrender the freedoms that millions of Americans have died to protect. Your freedom is your responsibility. Take it seriously.